Hi, everyone, and welcome to the second Network Voices conversation. This series pairs members of the Marathon of Hope Cancer Centers Network patient working group with network researchers and clinicians so that we can learn about this pan-Canadian initiative and the impact it can have on cancer patients. So before I introduce today's guest, it's probably a good idea for me to introduce myself. My name's Natalie Kwadrans, and I'm based in Calgary, Alberta. I'm a breast cancer patient since 2019 when I was diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer 5 days after my 46th birthday. So, in terms of the topics that we're talking about today on precision oncology, I've had only limited use of precision medicine in my cancer treatments. But because of my extensive family history of cancer, I did qualify for genetic testing. Unfortunately, or fortunately, not quite sure, I didn't have any of the large known mutations. But where I have had some exposure as where it relates specifically to the subtype of my cancer. And my subtype overexpresses a protein called HER2. And one of the treatments I receive is often referred to as the poster child of personalized medicine. And that's because it specifically targets the mechanism that causes this overexpression of that protein. So, Rosilene, do you mind introducing yourself?
That's all right. Thank you, Natalie. I'm Rosilene Kraft. I live in Coquitlam, British Columbia. I'm a professional engineer with master's and PhD degrees in engineering, and I have done some research in tumor modeling. I'm married and have a bright 10-year-old daughter. And in 2018, at 47, I was also diagnosed with metastatic breast cancer. Following expert recommendation, I paid for a genetic test looking for inherited mutations. It showed I had none of the most common germline mutations associated with cancer. At the time, that expert also requested a specific test for an acquired mutation in my tumor, PIK3CA, to see if I qualified for a clinical trial. My tumor had it, but I chose not to change treatments at the time because my tumor was responding well. In 2020, I had a breast reduction with a lumpectomy and removed my primary tumor, which had started to grow again. Sometime later, I decided to pay for a genomic test using this fresher sample to see which other mutations my cancer could have, and some specific tests to see if it could respond to immunotherapy, so it could be maybe an option in the future. I found out it had a mutation in the PTEN gene besides the one that had been identified before. In early 2022, having had disease progression, I joined a clinical trial with a drug that targeted an AKT mutated cellular pathway, which also involved those two mutations that my cancer had. ctDNA, circulating tumor DNA, genomic sequencing, also called liquid biopsy, was then done as part of the trial. I later experienced further disease progression and am now, in 2024, on an antibody drug conjugate that targets even lower expressions of the protein HER2, as is the case of my cancer, for the delivery of a more potent cytotoxic drug, but with reduced side effects. See, I had to pay for most of my tests, and I hope that someday soon, these tests will become standard of care and be covered for all cancer patients in Canada. Over to you, Natalie.
Thanks, Rosilene. I'm really excited to have this conversation and host it with you. And today we'll be talking with Dr. Janessa Laskin. Dr. Laskin is a renowned medical oncologist at BC Cancer. She's a leader in precision oncology research and care. And she's also very involved and co-leads the Personalized OncoGenomics program, or POG, which you may hear us refer to occasionally. And that uses advanced genomic profiling to tailor treatments for cancer patients. It's really exciting. Dr. Laskin's innovative work in integrating genomics into clinical practice is transforming how we actually approach cancer treatment and therapy by offering more targeted and effective treatments for patients with complex cancers. She's also a really important member of the Marathon of Hope Cancer Centers Network and leads and participates in several of the network's working groups. So really happy and thrilled to talk with you today, Dr. Laskin.
Well, thank you so much. It's really a pleasure to be here and speak with both of you. Thank you for sharing your stories. You're both very well versed in precision oncology, I have to say.
Thank you. So, Dr. Laskin, let's start with the basics. What is precision medicine in cancer?
Yeah, well, it's a great question because precision medicine is this buzzword that we hear all the time, but it can mean a lot of different things. From my perspective, it really speaks to the nature of cancer. And I try to think about why we call it precision is thinking about the treatment for an individual person. So I think about what does that mean in a cancer context? Well, cancer cells are just your own body's cells that are growing and dividing in an unregulated way. So they're growing and dividing faster than they're supposed to. But they're still your own body's cells. And so when you think about each of us individually as humans, we have lots of similarities, but we're also very, very different. And so it's kind of not surprising that the cancer cells that grow, even if they're growing in the same organ, you two both have shared that you have breast cancer, but your breast cancers are going to be very different because you two are very different individuals. So of course, the cancers you're growing are going to be very different. And so that's the best way, I think, to frame precision medicine is to think, okay, we're talking about an individual person and the cancer that they're growing. And in a more detailed way, cancer is usually driven by errors in what's called the DNA. So those are the set of instructions to tell a cell how to behave. So each cell in our body pretty much has an inherited set of instructions in the DNA. And when those instructions go wrong, that's when you can get this unregulated growth that ends up being cancer. I mean, there's lots of different ways it can go wrong. And, if you think about like a set of instructions, if you've got a set of instructions for how to build I don't know, a tractor or a washing machine or a piece of IKEA furniture or whatever, if you've got 7 copies of chapter 2 and you've moved chapter 11 to where chapter 3 should be, and you've ripped out chapter 7, you are not going to get a functional piece of whatever. And similarly, I think that's a good way to envision what we're trying to do by looking at the DNA. So if we can measure that set of instructions, look at the DNA, and then what happens downstream of the DNA, the RNA or the proteins or so on, then we might be able to pick a treatment based on what's wrong with your individual person's cancer cell. So both of you have actually already described that you're on treatments based on what is wrong with your individual cancer cells. So that's precision medicine for cancer. It's looking at, long story short, it's looking at what is driving each individual person's cancer, try to understand the nature of that change in the biology and think about how can we interrupt that change.
Mm-hmm. And could you detail a little bit better how precision medicine can improve the lives of cancer patients?
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody's different with that in that regard. Sometimes people just want some knowledge and understanding. Why is this happening to me? We may not be able to explain how it happened, but if you can understand why, maybe there's some comfort in understanding the biology. For some people, engineers in particular, love to know what is happening. But more importantly, I would say, for decades, we've just been poisoning people with chemotherapy. It's targeted in a sense that it's trying to kill rapidly dividing cells, but it's not targeted about why your cells are rapidly dividing. So I think in terms of cancer, we're trying to find, as I said, each person's unique drivers of their cancer and choose the right treatment for that person at any specific time point. So there's an idea that you're giving the right treatment to the right person at the right time, and that is precision oncology. And it should work better than just blanket blowing up all cells with poisonous toxic chemotherapy, or at least maybe the side effects will feel more worth it, or maybe there will be fewer side effects. So I think it's about choosing that right treatment, but also knowing and understanding the biology of your cancer, I think is empowering.
And today, what does precision medicine in cancer look like today?
Well, I mean, it's a great question. You've both gone through your own stories. Some of your tests were funded, some of your tests were not funded. So it's a very changing situation. It is standard of care in certain situations, in certain tumor types, and in certain stages of cancer where we do some simple testing to look for 100 or so known DNA or gene abnormalities. And the funding is usually linked to a specific treatment. So if a treatment is funded and accessible, then we might do the test for that treatment. So for example, I am primarily a lung cancer specialist. So in lung cancer, we do a screen of tests for people looking for EGFR, for example. It's a common, it's not common, but it's a well-described mutation in some people with lung cancer, and it's linked to a specific test. So that, treatment, it's linked to a specific treatment. So that test and treatment is funded. But there's a lot of times when people want the test and it's not in a funded situation. Or, even if it is, we don't always find these targets. So I would say across all cancer types, we find a potential target at maybe 20% or so of cancers. So it's an evolving field. Things are changing constantly. Tests are coming in and out of fashion. Some are commercial, some are homegrown, some are single gene. More and more, there's panels of 100 or so tests. It's a constantly changing field, and it's informed, of course, by research.
Mm-hmm. Is it like that throughout Canada?
Oh yeah, definitely. And different institutions in Canada will have access and funding for different tests. But broadly speaking, if there's a drug that's approved and funded in the Canadian landscape, then there will be a test that's linked to that. But how comprehensive that test is, or whether it includes other things, varies greatly across the country.
I see. And how is research helping to make precision medicine available to more Canadians? What role does the Marathon of Hope play in this?
Yeah, well, as I said, I think that there's some level of testing that's available in each province, but there is a lot of inequity based on where people live. So where is the testing done? How long does it take to get your sample sent from one place to another? And also what science and research is being done locally varies a lot, province to province, based on the expertise of the people, of different scientists working in different areas. So we're extremely lucky in British Columbia. We have the world-class Michael Smith Genome Sciences Center, which has propelled us to the leading edge of cancer genomic research. And other places have different strengths. So I think what the Marathon of Hope is trying to do is bring these strengths closer for all Canadians, potentially address some of these inequities. But also, even because Marathon of Hope is about data sharing, creating this platform where no matter where your genome is sequenced, where your data is generated, it will be shared to a platform that's available to all Canadian researchers. So that means that even if the local team, wherever you live, isn't doing the research, they have access to that data. And so then we're all learning from each other. And, Canada, I mean, we have an incredibly diverse, unique population. We have universal healthcare coverage, so a lot of our drugs are covered. And that's really, really important when we're trying to understand if we, for example, if we see an abnormality and we link it to a drug and someone takes that drug, we need to know, did it work or not? And we need to provide that feedback, because just because we find the target doesn't guarantee that the drug is going to work. And so those positive and negative or helpful and non-helpful situations are extremely important to feed back into this knowledge base, so we can all learn from the knowledge, no matter where it's generated. And this does not exist. This has not existed before. Marathon of Hope has created this. And in the name of Terry Fox, we all unite in Canada under this remarkable, inspiring, individual and foundation. We put our competitive academic differences aside, and we truly work together for what is best for Canadians and for the country. So I think really Marathon of Hope has brought out the best in Canadian researchers and scientists, attracting us all to a more collaborative environment. We don't have to be experts in everything. If we work as a team, we can all support each other. So that's, I think, the power of the Marathon of Hope Cancer Center Network.
Well, that's a perfect lead in, actually, Dr. Laskin, to my question,
Mm.
which is, when do you think the research initiatives like the Personalized OncoGenomics program in BC and the Marathon of Hope's network, when do you think they'll be able to translate that into findings for all of the patients within that network?
Yeah, we just call it POG because Personalized OncoGenomics is a mouthful. And we start to use it like a verb and an adjective and everything. So POG has become this word we throw around a lot. I mean, honestly, Natalie, we're applying this data already. We're already translating this data. So POG, as a BC-wide initiative, we started 12 years ago. So we, as I said, because of the partnership with the Genome Sciences Center, as a medical oncologist, the vast majority of medical oncologists linked across the province have been able to refer patients into POG. And we have created this huge data resource already, and we're sharing that. We are trying to help other institutions develop their own protocols and bring out their own strengths depending on what they're interested in and what their capabilities are locally. The Genome Sciences Center is a massive institution. It's over 300 people working on this. So it's not a small task to do this in any population, and especially to do it proactively, where we're prospectively enrolling patients, or enrolling patients who are alive with their disease. It's a big thing to develop on your own. So we're trying to help other groups learn and grow. And over the last 12 years, POG has impacted and translated our findings to lots of groups. We've impacted individuals, we've created clinical trials, we've identified treatments and published on those treatments. And we put all this into the network. And as I said before, our positive and not so positive experiences are extremely important, so that other people can see that these cancer types reflected across the country, and try to make evidence-based decisions for their own patients.
That's pretty fantastic. Like, it sounds like it's moving at light speed, in fact. So, what would you say to a patient who comes in and they're just newly diagnosed with cancer? What should they be asking about precision medicine options right at the forefront?
Yeah, I think it never hurts to ask. I mean, this is why we're a source of information for people. In some situations, we don't need or use these, these genomic tests for standard of care. Like, if there's a very high chance that the cancer will be cured with something, then we don't want to mess around with something more experimental. But by and large, it never hurts to ask the medical oncologist, what about precision testing? What about genomic testing? You know, are there targeted options? How are you choosing these things? Because we're educators, right? You're coming into a very complex world of cancer, and our job is to try to help make sense of that. And a lot of this is in a research domain, so it's not standard of care yet. And research is an integral part of cancer care. There is no separating your research from cancer care. We always say care is research and research is care. So I think that it would be fantastic if every patient came and said, what kind of research protocol do you have for me? Because actually that's what we should be asking. How do I get more involved in research? What can I do? Maybe it doesn't always help you, but it helps other people. I think you should always ask about it. Yeah.
Well, that's fantastic advice. On an almost similar note, but pre-cancer, I was speaking to a friend of mine very recently, and she is, because of some history, she is flagged as high risk for breast cancer. And she wanted to get some genetic testing done for both herself and as well for her teenage daughter. When she spoke to her GP about it, the GP suggested that she not pursue that at all because it could nullify her life insurance. So is that a concern for patients that they should have regarding genetic testing? Because this is coming in before they're even diagnosed. And we see in the US, celebrities who get genomic testing and then they get prophylactic mastectomies as an example. So how would you guide a patient who encounters that concern from their GP?
Yeah, well, I think this is a great educational opportunity. So there's two different things we're talking about with genomic testing. We're partly talking about inherited risks. So that's in your DNA. You inherit those from your parents. And most cancers are not associated with a known inherited risk, but some are. And then mostly what I've been talking about, those are called germline risks, just for some terminology. Germline is what you've inherited from your parents. Most changes in the cancer DNA are what we call somatic, or they're changes in the cancer only. They're not changes in the inherited DNA, so they're not passed through generations. So most of what we deal with in cancer medicine and precision oncology is these what so-called somatic changes in the cancer cells themselves. So you're asking about cancer prevention in an inherited way, and that is an important part of what we do for sure. And there are hereditary cancer programs in the provinces that deal with these questions. And it is about education. So we're adding to the list as more people have cancer or families are identified. And then the more people who are sequenced and we gather information, we're slowly adding to the list of things that might be associated with an inherited risk. But it's a really personal decision. Would you want to know if your risk of cancer is 1%? Maybe not. Other people, or 50%. So it requires a lot of information and counseling. However, there is legislation to say that you cannot have this affect things like insurance. So it will be an educational opportunity for us to get the word out that this kind of germline or hereditary cancer testing is not a risk to you getting insurance. Information is not cannot be used in that way in Canada, and there's legal precedent and articles and so on that we can make available. Perhaps that's a good idea on our Marathon of Hope site. And really think about the opportunity to prevent cancers. That's that's the future. If we can prevent these from happening, we don't even need to design better treatments. So very, very important to not be scared off from that kind of knowledge, at least from a legal perspective.
I'll make sure I pass that on to my friend. So
Mhm.
I know that for me, this has been really enlightening. I'm sure for Rosilene as well, and all of our viewers. But before we end the conversation today, I'd like to kind of squeeze one little question in, if you'll allow me to.
Of course.
Great. I'd love to hear what you think precision medicine will look like in the future.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Isn't that great? I don't know what it's going to look like. So all sorts of hope comes in the unknown uncertainty of the future. That's where research is going to make a big difference. I will say, and I need to emphasize that even programs like POG or the testing, it's just a test. It's not a treatment. We're not designing treatments. We are gathering information. This is about information. So I think the more information we have, the more helpful it is. But it doesn't necessarily align you to a particular treatment and guarantee that's going to work. I mean, I think that's better than what we currently have, just guessing and pulling drugs off a shelf. But I think that the future, I have said previously that I feel like it's within our grasp to try to make cancer a chronic, tolerable disease. The goal, of course, should always be cure, but quite frankly, we can't cure a lot of things. We can't cure diabetes or heart disease or any of those things that we just accept as something we have to treat. Or perhaps we don't accept it, but at least we are aware that it's, not necessarily curable. So can we use precision oncology to choose drugs in a more educated, informed way so that the treatments for this can be tolerable and create long-term quality of life outcomes for people? And I think that testing is the way to do that. The more information that we have, the better. The more we know about each individual person's genome, I think then we can integrate that kind of testing model into everybody with cancer, including germline risks to prevent cancer. So I see the future. I hope that the future brings us a cure, but I think the immediate future is about using the information through germline and cancer genomic testing to pick drugs more effectively for people and give you back some time and some quality time, which is at the end of the day the most important thing.
Great, thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much. This is an excellent conversation. We learned so much today. Well, that seems like a good place for us to wrap it up. Don't you think, Natalie?
Yeah,
So thank you. Thank you so much for your time, Natalie and Dr. Laskin. We know we'll be seeing you soon.
Thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Our pleasure.